Hey everybody, how you doing? My name's Aaron LeBeau. I'm a developer advocate at Couchbase. With me, I have my very close friend Nitish. How you doing, Nitish?
Hi, Aaron. I'm really good. I'm really looking forward to today's evening.
Me too. So this is our virtual meetup for the month of October, and we're really excited. We have four amazing speakers here to talk about some stuff today. Now, first, before we get to our speakers, we do have some housekeeping stuff to do, and I want to start out with one. Connect 2021 is happening, folks. There's a link down on the banner to where you can register if you haven't registered yet. Now, there's over 80 amazing sessions that's going to be there this year, and the themes around monetization. So it really doesn't matter if you're a backend developer, you're a mobile developer, maybe you're doing DevOps. We have content for everybody, and we highly recommend you go through and attend. Now, the days it's going to be on are going to be on October 20th and 21st. Okay. And it's going to be all day sessions. Now, if you're saying, Aaron, well, I've got some work meetings, I can't make every session, that's okay. We're going to have video on demand available afterward. And so you can either attend live and ask questions in chat, which is really great when you can talk to the speaker live and get answers to questions you may have. Or when you watch a video on demand, you can either leave questions on YouTube or you can go to our forums and ask questions. Either way, we can get your answers to you for anything you may have, as questions when the content in the talk. So we are streaming live on Twitch, YouTube, and Twitter. Today, if you have questions about any of the content you see, please feel free to put them in chat and we'll try to answer them either in chat or we may ask your question live on the stream, which is pretty amazing. So with that, we have four great speakers, like I said before, and there's some amazing content here we're going to talk about today. Now, as everybody knows, one of the most biggest topics out there in the industry today is cloud. And so I'm extremely honored and excited to have our first speaker, Anil, coming on to talk a little bit about cloud. So Anil, let's go ahead and bring in Anil. And how are you doing today, sir?
Hey, Aaron. Thank you for having me here.
Excellent. So I'm going to just turn the floor over to you. I believe that you have a really great presentation and you're going to teach us some stuff about cloud and native.
Absolutely. Yeah, looking forward to it.
Excellent. Well, with that, we'll turn it over to you and get your screen on it.
Awesome. Cool. You can see my screen, right? Okay, cool. Awesome. Hey, everyone. Again, as Adam introduced, I'm Anil Kumar. I'm the Director of Product Management at Couchbase, responsible for our flagship product, Couchbase Server, cloud-native database on Kubernetes product lines. So let me start with my session. So so mainly, which as Madam mentioned, the biggest topics in the industry is cloud. So this slide here is like why cloud native architecture. So we have been talking about this cloud computing, cloud migration. Give me 1 second. I think I have it screen. Yeah, give me 1 second. Yeah. So we have been talking about the cloud computing and cloud migration for a long time, but when you look at the latest analyst surveys and the application portfolios of many organizations, that confirms that there is still a lot of work to be done. In many cases, what we have heard from our prospects or customers, the foreign users, is the challenges with databases not being part of the modern architectures and not meeting the multi-cloud or hybrid cloud strategy, and the ability to be part of this, the new DevOps mechanism or continuous delivery pipelines. It continues to be the key limiting factor in the cloud adoption. And this is why it becomes so important to understand how this cloud native architecture can help solve those challenges. So to begin with, what is the cloud native architecture? So the cloud native architecture is a design methodology and for building both the stateless and stateful applications. So there has been some confusion, which is like, hey, it is great architecture for stateless application, the business layer or the web layer, but actually speaking, it is a design methodology for building both the stateless and stateful applications and running them on a containerized and dynamic orchestrated platforms that fully exploits the advantages of this cloud computing model. To put it in short, the cloud native architecture is about how applications are created and deployed and not worrying about where they are deployed, how they are configured, and understanding this whole infrastructure. That is not what the cloud native architecture is. So it actually eases you away from just building your application, deploying them, and not worrying about those parts, right? So such architecture has now empowered the organizations to build and run scalable applications in this modern dynamic environment, such as public and private and hybrid clouds. And these are the applications which are built from ground up. They are designed as a loosely coupled systems. They are optimized for the cloud scale, like they are highly optimized for the cloud scale for performance, use of automated operations, and they take advantages of the latest and greatest, like the continuous delivery pipelines, to achieve the reliability and faster time to market. Right? And so, to summarize, the overall objective is to improve speed, scalability, and finally the cost margin also. Right? So here are the four core concepts which are driving this cloud native application development. You might have come across this in each of those different occasions. Like maybe you would have been hearing about microservices, DevOps, containers, and continuous delivery. But put together all, these are the core concepts which are actually driving the cloud native application development. Microservices, as most of us know now, so microservice is this architectural approach to developing an application as a collection of small services, like independent, isolated services. Each of these services implements business capabilities, runs in its own process, and communicates via HTTP APIs or messaging, right? And so this has become a new, the go-to modern architecture for building the applications now. So moving away from monolithic architecture to the microservices-based architecture. DevOps, on the other hand, is this collaboration between the software developers, the application developers, and the IT operations, with the goal of constantly delivering high-quality software that solves the customer challenges. So their job is all about the collaboration between the developers and IT operations to keep on pushing the software to the markets. So containers, on the other hand, is a key ingredient in my opinion. This is how this whole transformation started happening. So the containers are this key ingredient of this cloud native architecture, and that offers both efficiency, speed compared to all these virtual machines in the past. So this is kind of a triggering point for this cloud native architecture, in my opinion. Finally, the continuous delivery, right? The goal here is faster time to market, right? So the continuous delivery enables this agile product development practices. It's about shipping small batches of software to production constantly through automation. That's the most important thing, which is there's no manual hand-holding here. It's all completely automated, and so it goes from your test to dev to test to pre-production to production. Everything is streamlined. So now that begs me a big question: why do database, a stateful application, needs to adopt cloud native architecture? Here are some of the insights I have gathered from past few years talking to hundreds of our customers, top analysts in the industries, developers, DevOps engineers. And the one word which you keep seeing everywhere here is standardization. Right? Truly, standardization of development environment, standardization of cloud infrastructure, security, elastic scalability, and cost effective. All of these are like the key terms which you keep hearing from most of our customers. So the thing here is, you don't want your database, your stateful applications to be left behind. You don't want them to get siloed into a separate infrastructure, platform, its own lifecycle management. That will create a huge hurdle for your goals of speed, elasticity, and cost. Deploying and running both the stateless and stateful application is this new cloud native architecture, right? On a single target architecture. That will remove the impedance mismatch, which has been happening in the past, where you have your stateful applications in a different target architecture on the different platforms. You have tool sets for that, and then your database is still sitting siloed on a old on-prem or VM infrastructure, and you have its own separate lifecycle management, right? So that impedance mismatch needs to be removed. Right? From a business perspective, it also makes more sense, right? You have a freedom, and now you have power to pick any cloud infrastructure, be it a multi-cloud, on-prem, hybrid cloud, any of that, right? So it gives you a lot of power to pick any of those cloud infrastructure. Also, it also reduces the DevOps work of applying the security guardrails separately for your stateless applications and stateful applications. Now they can streamline everything on a single platform. And lastly, the cloud computing is it's all about elasticity and cost optimization, and so that's another important goal. And so these are kind of the reasons, or this has been what I have gathered from talking to our customers, why the database needs to adopt the cloud native architecture. So again, I talked about the why. So now let me go into the what's the value proposition of this, right? So, and this is exactly what we have done, and I have seen following Couchbase, there are other database vendors who are also in the same path of building a cloud native database for their database, right? It could be a graph database or NoSQL database, but they're following the same path which we have been working on. So cloud native database, its value proposition, right? So I talked about those 4 core concepts, DevOps and microservices and all. So I explained to you about how how to remove that impedance mismatch if you run both stateless and stateful application on the same platform. That reduces the DevOps workload. In terms of the continuous delivery, being the database on the same database, also being part of the same continuous delivery pipelines, streamlines the whole process of your deployment, and again, the goal of meeting your goal of time to market, or faster time to market. Again, for that, the key ingredient is containers, and database has to run on the containers. And I'll talk about our journey we have taken on the containers in a bit. But again, as I said, the containers is the key ingredient, and your application has to be containerized. And microservices, it has to work with the microservices-based architecture. So it's not enough to just containerize and deploy and run. It's also it's a mandatory or a requirement for your stateful applications to work with the microservice-based architecture. So here is our journey. It goes all the way back to, even in my opinion, it goes back to 2013 is when the Docker itself was infant and started, they launched their alpha version or beta version of Docker. We've been on the forefront of the Docker containers, and we launched Couchbase on the Couchbase repository on the Docker Hub in 2015. Today, when you look at the Docker Hub, we are one of the top 10 repositories in the Docker Hub, with the 50 million downloads on the Docker Hub itself. We were the first NoSQL database, a NoSQL distributed database to take on this thought leadership position and production certifying Couchbase Server, which is our flagship product, on the containers. And so that happened in 2016. Then we realized that running Couchbase on containers is not going to be easy, right? It's not regular VMs or bare metal. Containers are lightweight, and so you need a container orchestration. And that's where we started working with the Kubernetes and the enterprise version of Kubernetes, which is OpenShift. We launched our product, Couchbase Autonomous Operator 1.0, in 2018, August of 2018. We were again first NoSQL database to build native integration with the Kubernetes platform. We have released multiple minor and major releases after that, and I'll talk about some of the innovations we have done on this product line. So the result of last 4 years of effort and constant innovation is this full-fledged cloud native database stack is what we have built. So the Couchbase Cloud Native Database is the culmination of Couchbase Server and the native integrations we have built with all the open source cloud native technologies, such as Kubernetes, Prometheus, Helm, CNI, Core DNS, Operator Framework, Ceph, GlusterFS, STO, FluentBit, and the list keeps growing every year, right? So the operator here, the Couchbase Autonomous Operator, is the core component or the core product in this cloud native database stack that glues together all the other components. So it's kind of a prerequisite for you to get started on the cloud native database for Couchbase. So quick overview on the autonomous operator. As I mentioned, it is the core component. This is the native integration of Couchbase with the Kubernetes. What we have done is just think of there's a controller in the Kubernetes architecture, and this is responsible for lifecycle management of the worker nodes and all the parts which are getting created on those worker nodes. And what we have built is a custom controller for Couchbase. And to show you in this diagram, So what we have done is we built the Couchbase experts, the Couchbase engineers, the engineers who have built the Couchbase product. They have put their best practices knowledge, their how to run Couchbase in an efficient way in this controller. And so the Kubernetes operator is, in my opinion, a game changer for any application. Doesn't matter it's a stateless application or stateful application. It's the best way to run and deploy on the Kubernetes platform. And that's precisely what we have done for Couchbase. So on that journey, we have, as I said, we started building more and more capabilities. We started with the deployment and configuration, like automated cluster provisioning and the dynamic storage. So some of the most of the provisioning features in the beginning. Then we started adding more advanced features like the automated upgrade, automated backup, security, and now we have went up and started building more advanced capabilities such as auto scaling of your entire Couchbase cluster. You can scale horizontally, like you can add more capacity for your data, index, query, all the services. You can also scale vertically if you want to add more CPU memory, or if you want to add more disk to the more storage to your existing Couchbase instances. And so, as I said, like this is a last 3 years of work we have done. We have built these capabilities, and today, when I look at the benefits, as we obviously solved the challenge with the DevOps, we have simplified their life in terms of business. Yes, you can now deploy and run Couchbase on any infrastructure. You can lift and shift from one cloud to another cloud without any changes to your code. And lastly, it has reduced the operational cost of running Couchbase, not just single Couchbase cluster, hundreds of Couchbase clusters by 90 to 95%. We have automated most of our database operations. With that, I will here are some resources: the product page, blogs, and documentation. I would definitely recommend you guys to attend the Couchbase Connect Online 2021. As Alan mentioned, it's happening on October 20th and 21st. There are a lot of very interesting technical talks, as well as some of the business talks about how the cloud-native database is helping our customers and prospects, right? So definitely look forward to seeing you guys there. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that was amazing. So no, just real quick, I started Couchbase about 6 months ago, and one of the first things I got to work on was I was trying to figure out, like, how do I take a GitHub action and how do I make a Couchbase cluster automatically hand off on that? Mm-hmm. And somebody told me about Autonomous Operator, and the minute I saw it, I was just flabbergasted, because I've used other pieces of technology, but never once did I see something so easy as a Helm script. You run Autonomous Operator, and literally you can have a cluster in like AWS or Azure so fast and so quickly. And it's like scales, it's just so easy in the configuration to say, I want 3 of this type of service, and I want 3 data service and 4 index, and maybe I want a couple of full text search. I thought it was amazing, and it really feels like magic. I know it's not magic, but it's so great. It does feel like magic every single time I look at Autonomous Operator. So I'm really excited. I thought that it's a great topic, and people, if you're doing anything with Kubernetes, you really need to check it out, because it's just an amazing piece of technology.
Yeah, absolutely, Aaron. And I just want to add one thing. Although you might have, in my session, I have kept repeating DevOps, but actually this is amazing for developers. Right? So the developers can love it, because it's, like, as you said, it's just getting started with the Couchbase server has never been that simple, right? So it makes it so easy for you to just use Couchbase Helm chart, get a full-fledged Couchbase cluster deployed on any of those cloud, as you mentioned.
Yeah, I even run it on my local machine, just to do development work. I have Kind installed, which is Kubernetes and Docker, and I can easily just throw myself a 3-server Couchbase cluster to test stuff locally, even on my development machine, which is just amazing. I mean, that's the flexibility that it really brings, and it's just such an amazing product.
Awesome. Thank you very much, sir.
Hey, absolutely. So, folks, we kind of looked at that, and we know that the cloud is the future, right? Well, if we take a look and say there's another cool thing that's kind of going on here at Couchbase, and that is, we had Couchbase 7 come out recently, and Couchbase 7 is like a pretty cool product. And inside there, we have a lot of new features. Now, 2 of the features that I'm really excited about are scopes and collections. Now, we do have somebody here that is an expert at these. Shivani, I'm going to bring you on the stream real quick here, and I believe you have a talk ready for us to kind of talk about scope and collections and how you can take a look at using this new cool piece of technology to build multi-tenant, but also just to rethink the way that you engineer and store data.
Yes, thank you, Aaron. Just to check, you do hear me, right?
I do hear you. You sound wonderful.
Yeah. So yeah, hi everyone. So as Aaron mentioned, Couchbase Server 7 is our latest big release. And one of the flagship features in that release is scopes and collections. Pretty much a large part of our engineering organization worked on this feature for the span of this release. And we believe it's going to really help you as application developers and operators in modernizing your applications more easily with Couchbase. So I'm going to talk to you briefly about what this is. Just a quick intro. Aaron did introduce me, but my name is Shivani Gupta, and I'm a director of product management at Couchbase. So I sort of helped shape this feature, and and it's a little qualified to tell you about it. So 1 second. Yeah. Couchbase Server 7 introduced scopes and collections, and we re-architected many pieces, pretty much all the pieces of our platform to be cognizant of scopes and collections and support this throughout the product. Essentially, they enable multi-level data containment. So they're logical containers inside a Couchbase bucket. So as you know, Couchbase is a distributed NoSQL platform. So you deploy a cluster of one or more nodes. In a production setup, you would have at least 3 nodes. And inside that cluster, you create one or more buckets. A bucket is like a database. So if you're coming from another platform, relational or NoSQL, what you might think of as create database is create bucket in our system. Now with 7, we let you create additional levels inside a bucket. Previously, you would create a bucket and start storing your document data inside the bucket directly. So now you would create one or more scopes inside each bucket. And inside each scope, you would create one or more collections and then start storing your document data inside the collection. So as I will show in the next slide, scopes and collections have a lot of really remarkable features, which make them very helpful in a broad spectrum of use cases. But the thing to note here is that many of you as app developers or DevOps who were deploying apps inside a Couchbase cluster, whether on premise or on the cloud, we're running into this 30 bucket limit because buckets are heavyweight in Couchbase. So we allow up to 30 buckets, and oftentimes people were using a bucket for each of their microservice or tenant, as we will see, and they would run into this limit and be sort of forced to spawn a new cluster. And sometimes these clusters were underutilized, resulting in higher TCO. But now with scopes, you can have 1,000 scopes per cluster. So that's a lot of scopes. And also 8,000 collections per cluster. So sometimes this creates confusion. Well, is it 1,000 collections per scope or per cluster? So these numbers are per cluster, and you can slice and dice however it suits your use case and deployment scenario. So you could create 1,000 scopes with 1 collection each, or you could create 10 scopes with 100 collections each. Or 1 scope with 1,000 collections. So it's really up to your use case, what works for you. So this is a short presentation. I'm just going to stay at a very high level and not deep dive, but I'll give you pointers and resources to how you can get more information. So essentially, scopes and collections have lifecycle management and access control at all the levels. So now you have the ability to control lifecycle as well as security at bucket, scope, and collection level. All right. So first of all, each of these levels is a separate namespace. So you can have 2 documents with the same key in 2 different collections without a collision. Similarly, you can have 2 collections with the same name in 2 different scopes. And also, two different scopes with the same name can exist in two different buckets. So the namespace is contained within its immediate parent, right? So so this is very helpful, as you will see in deploying multi-tenant tabs. Also, you can index each collection separately. So previously, if you had to create an index in Couchbase, you would index the whole bucket. And sometimes if the bucket contained multiple types of documents, the index was not relevant to all the documents. But now you control indexing at each collection level, which is much more efficient and performant. In terms of lifecycle, naturally you can create and drop each of these entities on their own, but also you can set expiration, which in Couchbase is called TTL, time to live, at individual collection level. Also, you can monitor stats at collection level as well as scope level. So you can monitor how many operations were performed, or how much memory was consumed, or disk space was consumed by each collection. Now, this is the big enabler for a lot of use cases. So we have role-based access control, also known as RBAC in short, for controlling security and access at each of these levels. So you can decide that collection A is writable by user 1, and collection B is writable by user 2, but not vice versa. Or you can say collection A is readable by everyone, but writable only by the special admin user. So, and also you can do this at scope level and bucket level. And if you do it at any of the higher levels, it percolates down to everything under it. So there are many other detailed talks and blogs on how all this works. We will not go into those details here. This is just a flavor for what you get. XDCR, which is our cross data center application, has also been enhanced to be scope and collection aware, and it provides lots and lots of flexibility with what level you can map at, how you can do remapping of source and destination names, and filtering. So lots of flexibility, which will make your setups for migration from a pre-collection scenario to a post-collection scenario much easier, as well as all the use cases with microservices and multi-tenancy. Backup restore also similarly is very flexible. You can take a backup of a whole bucket, but restore only a collection out of it. Or you can just take a backup of a single collection, and while restoring, do some filtering and just get some of the keys partially. So again, lots of flexibility with how you use backup restore. This is a very simple example of what a scopes and collections usage might look like. And this is actually one of our sample data sets. So if you deploy Couchbase out of box and just create a bucket with one of our sample data sets, it'll get deployed into a new bucket, which will be called travel sample. It'll have a scope called inventory with a few collections holding travel kind of assets. And it has a few other scopes also to demonstrate the use of multiple scopes. But this is something you can play with out of the box. You can run queries, you can insert documents and do various things. So again, this is just an example for how things look like. So this is some of the big tasks / use cases, which are really simplified by scopes and collections, and sort of our motivation why we built these into our platform, because many of our customers were asking for these sort of things, and this is the answer to all those requirements. So it really simplifies your mapping from RDBMS to Couchbase. As you saw in that hierarchy, you can think of bucket as database, scope as what some databases call schema, like Oracle and SQL Server call it schema, and a collection is really a table. So once you have the entire hierarchy of constructs available, it becomes much easier to map your RDBMS application, as well as your queries in our query language look very much like SQL queries. The second big one is microservices consolidation for higher application density, lower TCO. So as you saw, we have RBAC at collection level. You can have 1,000 collections in a cluster. So you can, if you map a microservice to each collection, you can pack a lot of microservices in a single Couchbase cluster. Third is multi-tenancy. Again, most multi-tenant scenarios do not require physical isolation, which if you need physical isolation, you need a separate cluster for each tenant. But a lot of scenarios just require access and logical isolation, and hence, using scopes, you could pack up to 1,000 tenants inside a single Couchbase cluster. So a lot of details of these use cases and how you could accomplish them are available in blogs that are available on our blog website. And feel free to look at these. There's one on how you can simplify multi-tenant app deployments. There's one that goes into details of RBAC, then how your nickel queries get simplified with collections, how to use XDCR, and another useful one, a very useful one for how you can migrate from a pre-7.0 pre-scopes and collections Couchbase cluster to one that uses scopes and collections. So Aaron said Connect is coming up, and we're all very excited about it. October 20th to 21st, 2 days. There is a lot of sessions which go into using scopes and collections. So I encourage you to try and attend these either live or post conference time. So there's one that goes into application modeling, then transactions, collections, charts. Like I said, collections and scopes have sort of impacted every component of our platform. So different individuals from different teams are going to be presenting about how it impacts their platform using collections on Spring Data Couchbase. So lots of them, data modeling, how to use it with transactions. You can do transactions across collections. So lots and lots of sessions for you to learn more about collections. All right, so that's what we have today. Thank you very much for listening to this. Thanks, Aaron. I'll hand it to you.
No, absolutely. Thank you. So scopes and collections are like a big deal. They really changed the way that you even like want to model your data. And I recently worked on a project where we were using a type field, and inside the type we would put the document type in there. But with scope and collections, you don't need that anymore. And I had one point in time I had like a project document, and inside of it I had like a due date index. But then I also had a user profile. It's like, wait a minute, if they're in the same bucket, the user doesn't have a due date, but a project does. But with collections, I could separate those out, put those into different collections. So now the index doesn't run against all these user profile documents I have. It only runs against these project ones the way it should be. So I saw like the minute I saw this, I just saw this massive value going, this is just like game changing. This is such a cool feature to bring in and really just change the way that you architect and build your applications to make it simpler, in my opinion.
Yes,
I really enjoyed
absolutely. So whether it's a greenfield application that you're writing from scratch, or you're taking an existing RDBMS application and you want to move over to NoSQL for all the reasons that people typically are considering that, inflexibility of RDBMS, or they're hitting a wall with respect to scale. So in either scenario, modeling with collections really simplifies how you think about your application. It maps nicely to your ORM layer, can put different JSON documents into different collections. So it's really cool stuff. We think that will really simplify the life of developers, as well as DevOps guys, as you saw,
absolutely.
to pack a lot of stuff which can actually coexist in a single cluster.
I totally agree with everything you just said. Also, just so you know, the developer's website, we have a developer portal, developer.couchbase.com. We have a bunch of quick starts up there that actually use scopes and collections. So if you're a .NET developer or a Java developer, we've got examples in many different languages. Everything from Java to Node.js and Express, and obviously the .NET, and there's examples out there in Python. So it's really just like a jam packed of different languages. So if you're also interested in like seeing some samples out there, tutorials examples of like just how you can get started with a greenfield application. Those quick starts are also very useful. Of course, a ton of documentation on our documentation website on scoping collections. And of course, we have Connect. And there's going to be just a ton of information out there. So if it seems like you're a little bit overwhelmed, don't worry. We have a lot of content coming out about it. And I promise you, when you see it and you just realize how cool it is, you'll never want to go back to the world before scopes and collections. So I appreciate you coming on and kind of introducing it to us and getting us up to speed on it. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
So with that, one of the things that, is also big, since we're talking about this whole world of Couchbase 7, right? And we talked about how we had scoping collections come out. Those are just amazing features. But another feature we have is this concept around a very word that in document databases doesn't get talked about as much, transactions and ACID. And so with me, or with us today, I'm going to bring on another person from Couchbase. Kimmy, how are you doing? I know you have a great talk about this, and this is something that's really, as an application developer and somebody that's been doing it a long time, this really gets me excited because this is like the heart and soul of complex data querying and data writing and stuff like that. So I'm really excited to hear what you have in store for us today.
Absolutely, Aaron. We worked really hard on this, and it's basically being done to get the RDBMS customers to Couchbase. And so I'm really excited to talk about it as well.
Excellent. I'm going to turn the floor over to you, and please teach me on this so I can use it in my next application.
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. Do you see it?
I sure do.
Okay, perfect. Hi guys, I'm Kamini Jaktiani. I'm the Senior Engineering Manager for the Nickel Query team. And I've been given about 15 to 20 minutes, so I'll try to get right into it. Couchbase, as you might know, is a NoSQL database with an exceptional query language called Nickel, N1QL, which is very, very SQL-like. And so far, if you had used Nickel for, say, inserting, updating, deleting, selecting documents, you would have actually gotten atomicity, but only at the document level. With this feature, we have introduced the ACID semantics into usage of Nickel, and that's what this talk is going to be all about. ACID. So when you talk about transactions, what is transactions actually? Transactions is just a series of read and write operations which need to be protected. So you want the entire set of operations to either go through or roll back, right? And we associate this word ACID, this acronym ACID, with transactions. So just going touching very quickly on what is ACID. ACID, A stands for atomicity, wherein you want the entire set of actions to either complete or roll back. C stands for consistency. So if you have your database in a consistent state before the transaction started, you want to make sure that after the transaction is completed, it is still in a consistent state. So in case of RDBMS, there are a bunch of constraints like primary key, foreign key constraints, null constraints, unique key constraints. So you have to make sure that after the transaction, all those constraints are met. I is for isolation. So on a system, you can have multiple transactions going on at the same time. And you want to make sure that if the transaction has not completed, you're not seeing partial data. So you're never reading dirty data. And D stands for durability, which is, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. So similarly, if your transaction has committed, the data that has been modified by the transaction should remain there, no matter what. You might lose power, you might lose disk, but all the work that has been done in a transaction which has been committed should remain there. It should never be gone. So with that, let's get started with this talk. This was just a brief intro. So now, when you think of transactions, you or ACID and transactions, the first thing that comes to mind is a database like Oracle, Postgres, MySQL. So how does a TPCC delivery transaction look on, say, MySQL? It starts with a start transaction. You set an isolation level. You have bunch of these selects, deletes, updates, and then it ends with either a commit or a rollback. This is how a delivery transaction. Now, what is TPCC? TPCC is basically a benchmark for transaction processing. It's a very well known benchmark which all the RDBMSs use to showcase how good they are. And we have been able to run TPCC with Couchbase transactions as well. And now I'll show you how the delivery transaction of TPCC looks on Couchbase. Ta-da! Absolutely the same. We also start with a start transaction. We end with a commit or a rollback. The start can also be replaced by begin work or start work, whatever you're used to. We have an isolation level, which is the default isolation level of read committed. Look at the selects, deletes, and updates. Exactly the same syntax. So that's the beauty of Nickel. It is very, very SQL-like. Let's go with another example. This is the new order transaction of TPCC. And you'll see I have put in a few dots in between. It's because the new order transaction is a really big transaction and I did not have as much space on the slide. New order is the way the TPCC actually measures the performance. It's the number of new order transactions per minute that you measure. Now, let's look at the new order transaction in Couchbase. Pretty much similar. Start with a start, end with a commit. The selects and updates look the same. There's a slight difference in the insert because we have it's a key value store and we need to have a unique key. So here you see that if you're used to doing transactions on Oracle, Postgres, any RDBMS for that matter, it should be pretty much the same on Couchbase. So what am I trying to say here? I'm trying to say if it swims like a duck, looks like a duck, and quacks like a duck, it probably is a duck. So if we look like an RDBMS transaction, we are handling workloads like one, we are just like RDBMS transaction. And so basically you saw that this is how the Couchbase transaction looks. So we have a start transaction, you have multiple statements, and you have a commit or a rollback, right? So far we talked about syntactically how similar we are to RDBMS transaction. I'll go in a little bit more detail about what we have done with Nickel transactions. So Nickel transactions, like I mentioned, is multi-everything. You can have multiple statements, just like here, you can have multiple statements. You can be working on multiple collections. So you can see item is one collection and district is another collection. These collections can be part of multiple scopes. The scopes can be lying in different buckets, multiple buckets, and you can do the Nickel transactions using different tools. Like you could use your REST API to do it. You could use our CBQ shell, which is very similar to pSQL of Postgres. You could use Java SDK to do it, and as well as UI. So there are multiple ways to be using Nickel transactions. And the best thing so far about the design of Nickel transactions is that there is no central coordinator. So Couchbase is like a distributed database, not like, it is a distributed database. You can have query nodes, analytics nodes, indexing nodes, eventing, key value, and so on. And you can have multiple query nodes or multiple query services. So if you are able to run, say, 1,000 transactions on a single query node or a single query service, if you want 3,000, you can add 3 query services. It scales that well. We have been able to verify that. And that's because there is no real central coordinator. The query node itself acts as the coordinator. Also, we support optimistic concurrency with read your own writes. And so maybe since we have some time, I could quickly run through what we really do. How does it internally work when we do the transactions? So the first statement here is start transaction, which is getting you started with the transaction. Start transaction is a very special statement, actually, because it's a multi-node system and you can have multiple query services. Start transaction gives you a unique ID, a transaction ID, which gets associated with the transaction. And after that, every statement in that transaction uses that transaction ID to go back to the same query node. And I'll explain that in a minute why. So if you get the next statement as update customer set balance, where customer ID is 4872, when this statement comes to the query node, it looks at the where clause, so the CID. It selects the index, and the indexing service will then return the document ID of the document that satisfies this where predicate. This document will then be fetched from the KV service into the query service, and the balance will be updated. Now, if there were no transactions, this document would be sent back to the KV and the update would have completed. But since it's a transaction, this document is not going immediately to the KV because you want to make sure that all your statements are successfully executing. So this modified or mutated document is then kept in a delta table of the query node. So for every transaction, there is a delta table per query node per collection. Per transaction per collection. And this document will get stored there. Now comes the next statement, update customer. Again, it will look at the customer ID 1924. It will select the same index. The indexing service will return a document key. That document key now, instead of directly going to the KV, we will see, oh, there is a delta table associated with this transaction. So is this document already present in this delta table? If it is not present, and of course in this case it is not present, so it will go and get it from the KV, update the balance, and hold this mutated document again in the same delta table. Next comes the select statement. It looks at the customer ID. It goes to the indexing node. The indexing node will return the two document IDs. The two document IDs will now, again, we look into the delta table and find the two document IDs right in the document, in the delta table. So you don't need to go to the KV. And that's where I say read your own writes. So read your own writes are happening because you have this own delta table, which then gets destroyed at the end of the transaction. So there is some amount of memory bloating, and that bloating will really depend on the number of mutations you're doing within the transaction. And that delta table gets cleaned up as soon as you commit your work. Now, once it gets the commit, it takes all these mutations and sends it down to the KV, wherein they do some kind of cache check to make sure that this document has not been overwritten by another transaction. If it has been, then the entire transaction will be rolled back. But you see, from start to commit until the time you have reached commit, you have never really written to KV. So we consider that to be the read phase, and that's why the optimistic concurrency. The write phase comes into the picture only from commit till the time it is actually committed. So that's a brief introduction into transactions. And then I'll quickly talk about the workloads. And anything, suppose you had to plan, let's take an example of vacation after COVID, right? Now, if you had to plan a vacation after COVID, the final actions will basically be giving in your credit card, booking your flight, booking your hotel. Those will be the final transactions. But how do you arrive there? You're doing a bunch of searches. You're looking for the COVID numbers. You're looking for the safety. You're looking for the hospitals. Then you're looking for the places that you want to actually go and see, the cost, and so on. So you don't reach the transaction straight away. For every transaction, there are about 1,000 interactions that you're having with the system. And before this whole introduction of ACID into Couchbase, we were behaving as the system of interaction. We were capturing all the inputs, all the searches, and helping you with the personalized. So there are many customers who use us for who were using us for system of interaction, capturing up to the point you're actually doing the transaction. And then for transaction, you were using your RDBMS like Oracle or Postgres, right? But now, right from the system of interaction to the system of record, Couchbase can serve all the workloads. So you can have multiple workloads all handled with the same database. And to So let's try to end right here, giving time to address for the analytics. So takeaways from here: Nickel is SQL for JSON. Nickel transactions are very easy to understand. If you have used RDBMS transaction, pretty much the same. We hide the complexity of the distributed system completely with our design, and it's designed for modern scale out systems, and it can handle both relational and NoSQL workloads. And we support all DML statements in the transactions, which is select, insert, update, delete, and merge. Last but not the least, there are many topics coming in Connect. We are super excited to talk about them. And there are a few topics on transactions, and there are topics on Java SDK. There are topics, Couchbase makes nickel acidic, which is going to be this exact talk with a lot more details, lot more examples, lot more demos. So please make sure that you make some time to attend our talks. And I think that's the end.
That is amazing. So, one, thank you very much for coming on and talk about this. One of the things I found just amazing looking at just the SQL code, that the nickel code that you. Here's the thing, I just screwed up. I said, hey, that's SQL, but it's really nickel. That's how close it is to SQL. Is that literally it looked just like SQL. I started my career years ago, like I remember in I think it was 1996. I was working on a Sybase database system in T-SQL, and that transaction code looks exactly like the code I wrote like back in 1996. To me, that's pretty amazing to see that this knowledge that I have gained like years and years, over 25 years ago, is still relevant today. And I can take that knowledge and use it inside of this new transactional world that we live in inside of Couchbase Server 7. And the syntax looks exactly the same, like I said.
Exactly the same.
The beautiful thing is like there's places like healthcare where it's really critical that the data is actually validated, and that you make sure that if you're going to write all that data, especially when it relates to multiple different things, you have x-rays that relate to lab results. You want to guarantee that when that writes to the database, it's guaranteed that it's all written and that state is there. Transactions are just so important. I look at this going, this is a game changer. This really brings people in that maybe they weren't used to, like going, hey, I don't think I can use this because I don't have transactions. Now they do. The modernization is here. You can come in and you can move over some of these legacy, really old applications, I believe. And a lot of times that code looks almost the same like I wrote. So a lot of times the code change is not going to be a lot. And absolutely, you don't have to learn something new, right?
Absolutely.
And I'm not trying to pick on anybody else, but there's a lot of times you go into another system and it's just like there's new database functions you have to learn and all these crazy things. And as a developer, it gets super daunting when you're going, oh, there's just so much to learn, and I have to convert and all this other things, and I have to get new features out. Just seems like it's just game changing to be able to take the same thing I have and make it happen over here. So I appreciate this very, very much, and I'm definitely going to be taking a look at a couple of things I'm building and seeing how I can fit transactions into them.
Thank you,
Aaron. For your time. Awesome. Well, in many ways, we have one more talker that we're going to go through and have on here, and we're having a couple of seconds of technical difficulties here as we're getting Idris ready for getting onto the stream here. So with that, we talked about Couchbase Server 7. We talked about the new features we have both in collections and scopes, and now you can see that on top of collection and scopes, now we also have transactions. And this is really changing the way that you want to either take your existing applications and architect them to even make them more resilient, more flexible, or if you have a legacy system and you want to bring it into Couchbase, really the barrier has been lifted, and a lot of times you can kind of get into those. So it looks like we're having some technical difficulties with the last speaker, and so I apologize for that. And I know that basically, we're trying to keep the stream around about an hour here, and we're a little bit over an hour in. So I'm going to see real quick here if we have any questions from the chat. I'm going to look here and just see if there's anything that anybody are asking questions about. Now, another quick reminder again, these is just a taste of all the stuff that's going to be available at Connect this year, Connect 2021. And once again, like I said, you can register for it and you don't have to attend every session. 80 sounds daunting, right? And then back when you had to go physically to an event, it's like I have to take 2 days out of my schedule. And that seems hard. But the beauty thing about it being online and virtual is that you can attend the sessions that you feel most important and then maybe watch some other ones on video on demand later. So if you think transactions are great, go look at those. There's a lot of different talks on that. that. The same thing with scopes and collections, right? We have a lot of different information for you. And if you're new to Couchbase and you're seeing this for the first time, you're like, that looks a lot like SQL. We have a lot of talks about Nickel, and that's our language that basically looks a lot and smells a lot like SQL, and is very similar, but it has flexibility. With Nickel, you have things like if we have a document and we have child documents, you can actually talk to those fields, those attributes, those child documents inside of a parent document. And so there's just amazing things that Nickel brings to the plate that you can do that you just can't do outside of it. And that's why it's so unique and really kind of brings things to market. A couple other things real quick there too is, one thing I really love about Couchbase, and I'm passionate about it, so I can talk all day about it, but is the ability to do things like full text search and the ability to do that very quickly inside of a Nickel query, because of the fact that full text search is built in, which just brings this whole nother breath. You don't have to bring another product into Couchbase to do that. It's just built in. And so because of that, you're not having to go through and say, oh, I need to bring in something like Elastic or another product in to kind of do that. Now, of course, we do have connectors for Elastic, and if you want the flexibility, we can give you that flexibility if you need that. But literally, the full text search that's built into Couchbase is really super powerful. So I'm looking here, and it looks like we're still having some technical difficulties. So Nitish, do we have any other questions? I'm going to bring Nitish on here. Hey, bud, do we have any other questions coming in from chat? Just checking to see if there's anything else that the community may want to know.
So far, I haven't seen any questions from the community.
Okay, excellent. Well, the good news is that this isn't going to be the first talk that the first live stream that we have. We're doing these monthly moving forward. So every month you'll be able to go to the virtual meetup. You can go to YouTube and Twitch, and we'll be having different speakers come on. We've got some really exciting stuff coming on in the months of November and December. So the beautiful thing is we're just getting started. We've got these really great talks we did today. We have Connect coming up. And then in the months of November and December, you're going to see some even more amazing speakers talking about stuff. And I may even speak about some stuff. Actually, I've got some cool stuff I want to show off with maybe some stuff with mobile, maybe, and don't want to give too much away. But there's some really cool things that we're working on that I'm really excited, and the whole team is doing. So finally, just before we go here, a quick reminder that for the scopes and collections, there's a lot of great tutorials on our developer portal website. The documentation team has been working, and they have brand new documentation up for Couchbase 7. So whether you're trying to figure out transactions, you're trying to figure out scopes and collections, we have an amazing set of documentation on the documentation website and the developer portal. Of course, if you have any questions at all, please hit us up. Social media, you can hit us up on Twitter. You can hit us up on the YouTube on this video. You can make comments. You can go into our forums. We have forums that are very popular. You can ask questions there. We are here to help you. We are here to answer any of your questions. We want to make sure that if you are looking for information, we get you that information you're looking for. We're trying to go, we want to do everything we can, and we're excited to see what you're building. So also, if you're building something cool, let us know. I'm very curious to see what everybody's out there building. We talk to customers all the time, and it's just amazing to see the kind of things they're building. So with that, I think we're going to end the stream today. I want to appreciate everybody that spoke today for speaking with us today about all the cool things that we're doing here with the new versions of Couchbase. I want to thank Nitish, one of my bestest friends here from the Dev Advocates team, for joining me on the stream. And folks, I look forward to seeing you guys next month for the next stream. So everybody take care, stay safe, and I'll see you at Connect.
See you.
See ya.